time when the Supreme Court years ago had the Roe Wade decision that gave birth on abortion on demand. The Roe v. Wade decision was overturned, as we know, last year by the Dobbs-Jackson decision of the Supreme Court. And it created a lot of conflict in our country. We see that. Again, all the Supreme Court did was to say that the justices, when they made that ruling, that it was not in their authority to do it. It wasn't the federal government's business, it was the state's business. And so they left it to the states to make the decision by legislature, not by juridical means of who can have and who cannot have abortions. It was given to the states while it's not the federal government. So it was a correction that was made. People went crazy and wild about it. They thought that they could no longer have abortions and everything else. Obviously, it became more difficult to have abortions in certain states. There's no question about that. But the right to abortion, if you call it a right, there's no such thing as a right to abortion. Although, even in New Jersey, for example, last year before the decision of the Supreme Court came out in January last year, already the governor of this state of New Jersey, and the legislature, they made it part of the New Jersey Constitution that there's a fundamental right to abortion, and the state Supreme Court upheld it immediately. And so the state of New Jersey, even before Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court, became established in the state of New Jersey, in which you live, that it's a fundamental human right. It's wrong, it's immoral, it has no legitimacy, such a claim. For us, the Sanctity of Life Sunday is very important, and for years the church has been very attentive to that. Our own Archbishop Michael, he's there every year in Washington, D.C., which is Beatitude Metropolitan Tikkun. Every month, those that follow the Archbishop on the diocesan website or Facebook of St. Peter and Paul Friends, you can see that every month he's at some street corner, where there's some clinic in Brooklyn or Queens or Manhattan, and he has a service there, legally, obviously, safely there, and he witnesses to the fact that abortion is an evil, it's a sin. It's not birth control, it's not meant to be that. Our country is ravaged by the great sin of abortion. Let's put aside partisan ideology, whatever philosophies that we have. If you are an Orthodox Christian, life begins at conception. If you're a Roman Catholic, life begins at conception. That's the understanding. It's biblical. It's understood by us. We have three feasts of the conception of our Lord, the conception of the Theotokos, the Virgin Mary, the conception of St. John the Baptist, 9 months before they were born. The life was already in the womb, and the unborn already are human beings, that they partake of life. You can disagree with that. Well, if you're an Orthodox Christian, how can you disagree with that? If you're, in any sense, you know that this is the church teaching, and if you're a member of the church, you're obliged to follow it. And of course, people say, well, we can't impose our understanding on the will of others. That's actual stupidity to say such things. Why? That we have life. Life is gifted to us. There's no such thing as right to life, of human rights. Life is always a gift. It's given to us. God allows us to be born through our parents. Our soul doesn't come from our parents. Our physical material DNA comes from our parents, yes, but not the soul. The soul is breathed into us by the Holy Spirit, as it was breathed into the body of Adam and Eve. God is co-creator with us. We are given life as a gift from God. That's the truth. That's the fundamental reality of it. It's not something we deserve. It's not something that we can do with what we want at the beginning, at the ending of life. No. The life is a gift. It needs to be appreciated. It has to be lived. It has to be in right relationship. In your parashino, you got, there were excerpts from the letter of Metropolitan Tikkun that he spoke this year about the sanctity of life, and that excerpts were given to you in your Friday parashino. I hope you read that. But he says, he reminds us that right relationship is everything. The right relationship a husband has with his wife, that parents have with their children. that siblings have with one another, that we have with our friends, that we have with our co-workers, that we have with our co-citizens. It's right relationship. It's things in the order that God wishes it to be established. And of course, our whole world and our whole society is crazy today about that. You have a woman that becomes a Supreme Court justice, and they ask her, what is a woman? And she says, I can't answer what a woman is. I'm not a biologist. People define themselves by pronouns that have no meaning, that they take names and identify with genders that aren't theirs. That this is kind of stupidity. Not only stupidity, but it's affront to the fact of the fullness and abundance of life that Jesus Christ gives us. I've come that you might have life and might have it more abundantly. To have the abundance of life is to be in right relationship with God. Which Father Tikhon said there. He says, you want another word for right relationship? It's an abundance of life. It's a fullness of life. It's fruitfulness of life. That's what it is. The apostle tells us in the epistles that the time will come when people will say yes for no and no for yes. And they'll take falsehood for truth and truth for falsehood, that people will be all mixed up. We see that in our society. We see that in the world today. It's become commonplace. People have themselves as the ultimate authority. They don't believe in God. They set themselves up what I believe, what I want, what I think, my body, my choice. And all this is fundamentally falsehood. All this is spiritually destructive for them. And they propagate this. And politicians promote this. We see in our country, alas, that this great iniquity, this great evil, it kind of permeates. It permeates everywhere. The response of Christians that are believers in Jesus Christ is to affirm the truth of things, of what right relationship is. That every human being, wherever they're born, whenever they're born, whoever their parents are, that they are made in the image and likeness of God, and that God breathes a human soul into their life and gives them life. That's the theological, spiritual truth of things. That's what we believe, that's what we teach, and that's what we defend, and that's what we promote. And so as the Metropolitan says, let not be those who focus only on what is political and much less partisan and ideological pursuits. We can't get caught up in this web of parties and policies that promote certain things. No, there's a truthfulness to things. And that's life begins at conception, and that life at every stage, in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, that is of infinite value, that God gives life. And when the soul leaves the body, however it leaves the body, it's according to the will of God. It's not by accident. And so everything is in the providence of God. That's what we believe, that's what we teach. And as members of this American society, in a democratic society, we can express our concerns, our viewpoint about this. And we need to do that. Because we need to defend those that are unborn. They have no one to defend them. We need to defend them. We have to make sure that there are laws and there's understanding that promotes the well-being of right relationship that God has with his people. When you eliminate the will of God in society, and you base it on something else, whatever it is, materiality, expediency, whatever it is, you're lost already. You've defeated yourself. You want to know why our society is falling apart, why family life is falling apart, why marriages are falling apart, why violence is increasing, why drugs are increasing, why things seem to be getting worse all the time in terms of people relating to one another? It's because there's no spirituality. The people have no relationship with God. They don't fear God. They don't obey God. They don't know God. And so all these things, consequently, they fall in. And we ourselves, we're called to be apostles. We're called to be witnesses to what is true. It's not for naught that our Orthodox Church in America has, over the years, since Roe v. Wade, and be very instrumental in public in the defense of the life of the unborn. But all our bishops preach about that. All our bishops are attentive to that. We hope our clergy and our lay people are as attentive to that also. But let's take a break here and let's go into some statistics, okay? These statistics are from the year 2020. Every statistic I've given you is from 20 to 20. If you look, the 10 causes of deaths in America in the year 2020. We say 2020 because the data of 2021 is not fully in yet and there's still analysis, etc. The causes of death in America. The number one cause of death in America is what? Heart disease. Second, cancer. Third, COVID. That's what we would think. But the one number of deaths in America in the year 2020, according to CDC and Kuchmeyer Institute. Kuchmeyer Institute is a research program that promotes abortion, by the way. The number is 930,000 abortions in the year 2020. CDC has only 620, but they only do 47 states, and they include the District of Columbia. If you add California in and Maryland in, you have another 180,000. So the CDC says 620,000. Guttmacher Institute said there was 930,000 in the year 2020. Cancer deaths were 602. Heart was 696. And so the number one cause of death in America in 2020 was abortion. It was abortion. Those that are legally reported anyway. We don't know whether abortions that took place, but these are the ones that are reported by hospitals and clinics and doctors' offices. 53% of people that take abortion, they do it through pills. Okay, in the state, in New York City now, just 2 weeks ago, the mayor proudly proclaimed that New York City is the only city in the United States and in the world that offers free abortion pills. The state of New Jersey, you can get abortion pills through the mail, by the way, if you want. Abortions take place, 93% of the abortions take place in the first trimester. That's up to the first 13 weeks. And as I've done, well, if you ever see videos on that YouTube, suction cup, enough. 6% take place in the trimester, which is dilution and evacuation. And only 1% take place in the third trimester. 57% of those that have abortions are in their 20s. 31% of those that have abortions are in their 30s. 86% of those that have abortions are unmarried women. 86%. 14% for those that are married. Those that come to abortion for the first time is approximately 40% is their first abortion. 25% have had one abortion. 20% have had 2 abortions or more. 10% have 3 abortions or more. And 6% have 4 abortions or more. These are the statistics. This is what goes on. In the state of New Jersey, in the year 2020, there were 23,000 abortions. The total death rate in the whole United States in 2020 for murder was 24,000. 20,000 abortions in New Jersey, 24,000 murders throughout the whole United States. It's customary when civil authorities meet, every day the Congress begins with a prayer. Now, your tax dollars support 3 chaplains in Congress. There's 3 chaplains that are supported. Of course, there's separation between church and state, supposedly. But every day prayer begins in Congress. The New Jersey legislature opens up with prayer. I was once given a prayer at the state of New Jersey, the legislature, when they began their day. They gave me a $50 gift for it, on your taxes, by the way. And so prayers are said in Congress. Prayers are said in the New Jersey state legislature. And what they ask is for God's guidance. That I rightly govern. But if you're rightly governed, you have to be in alliance with God's will. You have to be in alliance with natural law. That you just can't govern on your own. That this is hypocrisy to ask God to bless you when what you are doing in legislating are things contrary to the will of God. This is craziness. This is unheard of. And so, as the Metropolitan writes, let me read a little more. They said, we understand that there's no opposition between reverence for life and true human flourishing of life. That is the same thing. In other words, for life to be holy, it has to flourish. It has to manifest itself as being holy. Or to cast the matter more bluntly, for those that don't understand, he says, we can never accept that abortion of infanticide is a solution for other human illnesses. That there are other social injustices that are inherent. We know that that's the quality of life, and we can have differences of opinion on that. How to deal with drugs, how to deal with the environment, how to deal with pollution, how to deal with traffic, how to deal with noise. All that is quality of life, and you can have different things on that. But there should be no differences about life, what it is at conception, and the life needs to be protected. It's absolute. It's absolute. We can have disagreements about that. And we see that we have politicians, we have those that in power that kind of make a distinction in their own lives. And they say, well, as a Catholic I believe this, but my job as a governor, as a president, is to for all the people. Well, to do that, you lose your own soul. And what you do for the people, it needs to be in accordance with God's will. You can't compartmentalize your spiritual, religious beliefs. That it's not something that is Catholic or Orthodox. It's something that is universal, the will of God. It pervades all of the world. It pervades all society. The Metropolitan, he encourages us. He says each one of us must start with our personal commitment. Personal commitment. That means conviction first. If there's no conviction, there's no commitment. And this personal commitment, it needs to be in our hearts, in our soul, in our families, in our parishes, in our communities. With whatever resources God may give us, we need to promote true human flourishing, starting with the right of life to all people at all stages of life. It's not only conception we're concerned about. We're also concerned about the end of life. You know that 2 years ago, in your fine state of New Jersey, they passed legislation which you didn't vote on. It wasn't a public referendum or anything. But the legislature decided that they knew what was best for you. Just as Congress decides they know what's best for you without asking you. What they decided to was establish in the state of New Jersey, as you have in 9 other states, dignity with death. What that means is this. It's really assisted suicide. If you have 6 months to live yet, and you can get a doctor to certify that you only have 6 months to live, then you have the right, the privilege to die with dignity. And you could acquire drugs that will put an end to your life at the time, or place, and location that you desire. These drugs are not administered by a doctor, no. You have to self-administer them. But your son, your grandson can go to the pharmacist and pick it up and bring it home for you if you want. Your pharmacist who was just writing for you pills 2 weeks ago for your cholesterol and for your heart and for everything else, now he's getting a prescription that will give you drugs to do yourself in. And so you have the right. If you're mentally capable, an adult, a New Jersey resident, and you have a doctor sign off for you, and you can self-administer these drugs, and you have 6 months to live, then you can die with dignity. In other words, you don't have to worry about suffering. You don't have to worry about being a burden for others. Then you can conclude your life on your terms, not on God's terms. This was done in the year 2019. The year 2022, there were 33 of these folks in New Jersey, your fellow citizens, that decided to leave this world by means of death of dignity or assisted suicide, whatever you want to call it. The state of New Jersey, per capita, has one of the highest abortion rates. In New York, Maryland, Florida, California, Texas, and Illinois, the per capita basis of women in New Jersey is one of the highest. It's one of the 6 highest in the country. We need to be concerned about life. You wouldn't want a factory that's polluting come into your neighborhood. You wouldn't anything that would disturb your life and your well-being to be established in and where you live. And yet this unseen silence, because it's not manifest. You don't see people with the abortions. It's easy to take a pill and life ends in the person. But it's an evil. And our country will never be blessed. It will never be sanctified. It will never promote itself as the well-being and have the well-being that it has. You can call to God all the day. I believe in God and God will trust in everything. But if you don't do the will of God, and you do things in opposition by legislation and everything else, then what are the consequences of that? We know that from the scripture. Now, when people decided to be on their own, God didn't bless them anymore. He said, fine. You want iniquity? Fine. You're on your own. And when we're on your own, we fail. We spiral further down into evil. We become more depressed. We become more cynical. We become more divisive. There's no wellness in us. No well-being in us. Because we rejected the will of God. When you reject the will of God in your personal life, there's consequences to that. We know that. We feel that in our own passionate lives. When society claims to follow God and believe in God, and they don't do the will of God, there's consequences to that. So when you see the news, and you see murders are proliferating, and we see that drugs are increasing, we see that there's more hostility, and that there's more family breakdowns, that things are getting worse instead of better in our society. Is God blessing us? We need to orient our life towards God through virtuous living, encouraging at the same time our fellow citizens and our brethren and our neighbor, wherever and however possible, so that they too with us may attain to their everlasting life and bountifulness in the heavenly kingdom. Let us, as we celebrate the Sanctity of Life Sunday, we only pray that God enlightens all of us, that we rightly understand right relationship, which is the abundance of life that is given in Jesus Christ, and we protect our own lives and the lives of others. We can't be indifferent. We have to be those that witness, promote, confess the fullness of life. Difficult. Our society is deeply divided on so many issues. But it doesn't matter. And we have to protect those who cannot protect themselves at the beginning of life and at the ending of life.